February 1943. Your Unteroffizier Klaus Richter crouched in a frozen trench outside Leningrad. Your squad has been pinned down for 3 hours by something you can't see, can't hear coming, and can't fight back against. In the last hour, you've watched your machine gunner, your radio operator, and your best friend Hans all die the same way. A single shot from nowhere, then silence. The shot always comes from a different direction. Sometimes from the ruined factory 400 meters away. Sometimes from the forest to your left. Once, impossibly, from over 800 meters, a distance you didn't think was possible with any rifle. Your officers keep telling you it's just one sniper, but Klaus is starting to think they're lying. What Klaus doesn't know is that he's facing the most feared weapon on the Eastern Front. Not a tank, not a rocket launcher, but a 50-year-old rifle that Soviet snipers have turned into an instrument of psychological warfare. The Mosin-Nagant 9130 with a PU scope doesn't just kill German soldiers, it terrorizes them. Today, I'm going to tell you how an outdated Russian rifle became the weapon that German soldiers feared most, why Soviet snipers were so devastatingly effective, and how one rifle design from 1891 helped turn the tide of the bloodiest war in human history. The story begins in 1891 with a Russian artillery captain named Sergei Mosin. The Russian Empire needed a new military rifle, and Mosin designed something that was simple, reliable, and powerful. The Mosin-Nagant fired a massive 7.62 by 54 millimeter cartridge that could punch through thick winter clothing and still kill a man at 500 yards. For 50 years, the Mosin-Nagant was just another military rifle. Russian soldiers carried it through World War I, the Revolution, and the Civil War. It was tough, simple, and got the job done. But nobody thought of it as particularly special until the Germans invaded in 1941. When Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the Red Army was caught completely off guard. Millions of Soviet soldiers were killed or captured in the first months. Entire armies were surrounded and destroyed. It looked like the Soviet Union was finished. But as the Red Army retreated, something unexpected happened. Individual Soviet soldiers with Mosin-Nagants began picking off German troops from the forests and ruins. These weren't organized military units. They were stragglers, survivors, men who had been cut off from their units but refused to surrender. One of these men was Vasily Zaitsev, a shepherd from the Urals who had learned to shoot hunting wolves. When Zaitsev arrived in Stalingrad in September 1942, he was just another rifleman. But he had something that would make him legendary. He could make the old Mosin-Nagant sing. Zaitsev's first day as a sniper, he killed 11 German soldiers. Not with a machine gun or artillery, with single, carefully placed shots from his Mosin-Nagant. Each shot was a small masterpiece of fieldcraft, patience, and marksmanship. And each shot sent a message to the Germans. You are not safe anywhere. The psychological effect was immediate and devastating. German soldiers who had marched confidently across Europe suddenly became afraid to show themselves during daylight. Klaus Richter wrote to his wife, "We move like ghosts now, always watching the shadows." The Russians have turned every pile of rubble into a potential grave. What made the Mosin-Nagant so effective wasn't advanced technology, it was simplicity. The rifle had just a few moving parts, all built to withstand the brutal conditions of the Eastern Front. It worked in mud, snow, sand, and temperatures that would freeze more sophisticated weapons solid. But the real secret wasn't the rifle, it was the men using it. Soviet snipers were recruited from hunters, gamekeepers, and marksmen who had grown up in the vast forests and steppes of Russia. They understood camouflage, patience, and fieldcraft in ways that city-bred German soldiers couldn't match. The Red Army quickly realized what they had and began training snipers systematically. Sniper schools were established behind the lines, teaching not just marksmanship, but psychology, camouflage, and the art of invisible warfare. Students learned to become ghosts, present but unseen, deadly but untouchable. Some of the most effective snipers were women. Lyudmila Pavlichenko, a history student from Kiev, became one of the deadliest snipers in history with her Mosin-Nagant. She killed 309 German soldiers, including 36 enemy snipers. When asked by an American reporter how it felt to kill so many men, she replied, "They were invaders. I was defending my homeland." The Germans tried everything to counter the Soviet snipers. They brought in their own marksmen, used artillery to blast suspected sniper positions, and even imported specialized counter-sniper equipment from Germany. But the Mosin-Nagant snipers seemed to multiply faster than they could be killed. Back in his frozen trench, Klaus Richter was living this nightmare daily. His unit had started the week with 32 men. By Thursday, they were down to 18. The sniper, or snipers, seemed to know exactly when someone would expose themselves for just a moment. A head above the parapet to check the wire. A hand reaching for ammunition. A soldier lighting a cigarette. What Klaus couldn't seize was Senior Lieutenant Ivan Sidorenko, lying motionless in a shell crater 300 meters away. Sidorenko had been in position for 6 hours, waiting for the perfect shot. His Mosin-Nagant was zeroed perfectly, and he knew the wind conditions by heart. When Klaus's radio operator made the mistake of standing up to adjust the antenna, Sidorenko was ready. The 7.62mm bullet traveled at 2,800 feet per second, covering the distance in less than half a second. Klaus heard the shot and the impact almost simultaneously. Another friend was dead, and the invisible enemy had vanished again like smoke. German military reports from 1943 show the growing impact of Soviet snipers. Entire companies were being pinned down by single marksmen. Supply lines were disrupted. Morale was plummeting. The simple Mosin-Nagant was achieving what tanks and artillery couldn't. It was making German soldiers afraid. The Soviets turned their snipers into heroes, using them for propaganda as much as warfare. Newspapers published their kill counts like sports statistics. Zaitsev became a celebrity. His exploits broadcast across the Soviet Union. The message was clear. Individual Soviet soldiers could defeat the supposedly superior German war machine. The Germans finally sent their best counter-sniper, Major König, to Stalingrad specifically to kill Zaitsev. König was a veteran marksman with an expensive German rifle and a scope that cost more than most Soviet soldiers made in a year. It should have been no contest. For 3 days, the two snipers hunted each other through the ruins of Stalingrad. König had better equipment, more training, and years of experience. But Zaitsev had something König didn't. He was fighting for his homeland with a rifle he understood completely. On the 3rd day, Zaitsev spotted the reflection of König's scope lens and put a single Mosin-Nagant bullet through the German's head at 400 meters. The super sniper, sent to kill the Soviet hero, was dead, and his expensive German rifle was just another trophy. Back at his position, Klaus Richter finally got lucky. He spotted Sidorenko moving between positions and managed to get off a shot with his Kar 98K. But the German rifle, designed for mass production and general infantry use, wasn't accurate enough at that range. The bullet went wide, and Sidorenko disappeared again. Sidorenko's return shot didn't miss. Klaus Richter died instantly, another victim of a rifle that had been designed when his grandfather was young, but had found its perfect purpose in the hands of Soviet snipers. By the end of the war, Soviet snipers had killed hundreds of thousands of German soldiers. Zaitsev alone was credited with 225 kills. Pavlichenko had 309. Sidorenko finished the war with 500 confirmed kills. And almost all of them were made with the same basic rifle design from 1891. German soldiers' letters home tell the story of this psychological warfare. "We are hunted like animals," wrote one corporal. The Russians have turned every shadow into a potential death trap. I haven't slept properly in weeks because I keep thinking about those rifles. The Mosin-Nagant outlived the Soviet Union that made it famous. Today, these rifles are still used by hunters, collectors, and soldiers around the world. They're prized for their reliability, accuracy, and the simple fact that they work when more sophisticated weapons fail. But the real legacy of the Mosin-Nagant isn't mechanical. It's human. The rifle became a symbol of how ordinary people could resist seemingly impossible odds. Soviet snipers with 50-year-old rifles proved that technology alone doesn't win wars. Skill, determination, and fighting for something you believe in matter more. The Germans had better optics, more advanced metallurgy, and superior manufacturing. But they were fighting an enemy that understood something they didn't, that a simple tool in the hands of a master is more dangerous than a complex weapon used by someone who doesn't understand it completely. Klaus Richter and millions of other German soldiers learned this lesson too late. They discovered that the rifle they'd dismissed as obsolete was actually perfectly evolved for its purpose, putting a bullet exactly where it needed to go every time in the hands of someone who knew how to use it. The Soviet snipers who wielded these rifles weren't superhuman. They were farmers, students, factory workers, and hunters who found themselves defending their homeland with whatever weapons they could find. But they turned those simple rifles into instruments of victory through skill, patience, and an unbreakable will to resist. The Soviet sniper rifle that terrified the Nazis wasn't terrifying because of what it was. It was terrifying because of who was using it and why they were fighting. In the end, that made all the difference between victory and defeat. If you found this story of simple weapons and extraordinary people as compelling as I did, make sure to subscribe to the channel and check out the videos on your screen right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.